අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Monday the 15th of May 2023. Growth outlook. The IMF expects the Sri Lankan economy to contract by 3% in 2023 before registering a modest growth of 1.5% in 2024. Stern action. President Ranil Wickremesinghe directs strict legislation to prevent child abuse and severely punish the offenders. Beware! The National Dengue Control Unit warns of a further rise in the number of dengue cases due to the spread of DEN3 variant. Easing. The Department of Meteorology forecasts a reduction of the heavy rainfall. Landslide warnings, however, in effect.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවේ රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරමක්.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟම ඇති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando in your top stories for tonight. Director of the Asia and Pacific Department of the International Monetary Fund, Krishna Srinivasan, says that Sri Lanka's economy is expected to contract by 3% in 2023 before registering a modest growth of 1.5% in 2024. Addressing a media briefing during a special briefing in Colombo with the IMF delegation visiting Sri Lanka, Srinivasan expressed a hope that Sri Lanka's debt restructuring process would be completed by September. In the meantime, the IMF resident representative in Sri Lanka, Sarwat Jahan, said the cost recovery measures on both electricity and fuel pricing are expected to be continued throughout the 4-year IMF program.
Given the weak external environment and domestic policy tightening aimed at restoring macroeconomic stability, the economy is expected to contract by 3% in 2023 before registering a modest growth of 1.5% in 2024. The IMF-supported program is an opportunity for all Sri Lankans to come together to work through this crisis to restore economic stability and put the country on a sustainable growth path. The IMF is here to help you along the way.
Domestic debt restructuring, what kind of a role IMF can play when it comes to recapitalizing the banks?
The authorities are making good faith efforts to negotiate with all their creditors, both private creditors and official creditors, and the engagement is going on quite well. In terms of the timeline, it's the expectation that the restructuring exercise will be completed, the first review of the program, which is in September or October. We don't get involved per se in any of the debt restructuring negotiations, defining the perimeter of debt, and so on and so forth. Any kind of restructuring will need to keep into account, make sure that the financial stability is assured.
The state-owned enterprises reforms like the CEP, what if COP won that?
A lot of these SOEs are not profit-making and they have been a drain on public finances. So in our program, as you'll have seen, we do have a structural benchmark on cost recovery for both fuel and electricity pricing. And that is a continuous benchmark. That means throughout the 4 years of the program. In addition to that, there are other SOEs that are not profit-making, and we have looked into those too. And we have asked that there is a restructuring of their balance sheets.
Just to check on the interest rates for this loan, and is it same across all the other countries, the interest rate that you all are giving?
We've estimated that over the lifetime of the loan for 2037, it would average out to about 5%. Sri Lanka, it's really a severe crisis, which hits people very hard. And then the IMF comes along and there's a negotiation with the authorities about the reforms that are needed to get out of that crisis. So in people's perception, these two things are linked and they may not like it. But Sri Lanka is actually a very good example of what happens when the IMF isn't here. What the IMF does is it provides some financing that cushions the transition from this very harsh reality to a new equilibrium. So it gives a little bit of breathing space to let these reforms that are necessary take place and help the country emerge from the crisis.
Taking into account the recent tragic incidents involving children, President Ranil Wickremesinghe issues a directive to the legal departments, instructing them to prepare a stringent legislation aimed at preventing child abuse in order to effectively combat child abuse perpetrated by elders and various segments of society. The head of state has emphasized the necessity of implementing a legal framework that imposes severe punishments on offenders.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe has issued a directive to the legal departments, instructing them to prepare stringent legislation aimed at preventing child abuse. According to the President's media division, the President has stressed the urgency of addressing the ongoing issue of child abuse perpetrated by teachers, elders and various segments of society. To combat such acts effectively, the head of state has emphasized the necessity of implementing a legal framework that imposes severe punishments on offenders. The President's decision to take action was prompted by recent incidents, including the tragic death of a 16-year-old girl in Kaluthara, as well as the abuse of 16 children by a tuition teacher in the same region. President Ranil Wickremesinghe has specifically highlighted the need to introduce a separate set of laws dedicated to safeguarding the welfare of the nation's children. To achieve this, he has called for amendments to be made to existing legislation, underscoring the importance of careful consideration during the process. The President also highlighted the importance of initiating a new discussion and raising awareness about the economic and social implications of parent-child interactions and mental health within households. In addition to the enactment of strict laws for child protection, the President has also directed his attention towards implementing a separate program in both public and private institutions, which aims to foster an understanding of a child's mindset and cultivate a society that embraces a broader perspective.
The Department of Meteorology forecasts a reduction of the heavy rainfall experienced in several districts of the country. However, the National Building Research Organisation extended its early landslide warnings issued to 5 districts, urging people to remain vigilant of pre-landslide signs.
The inclement weather prevailing over the island has so far affected 1,872 people belonging to 428 families in 7 districts of the country, including Hambantota, Mathara, Gampaha, Puttalam, Kurunegala, Trincomalee and Ratnapura. The Disaster Management Centre said 7 people have been injured and 1 reported missing. Due to the heavy rainfall in the southern province, water levels of some rivers including Ging and Nilwala continued to be on the rise. As a result, several roads were inundated in the districts of Gaul and Mathara. Further, floods due to heavy deluge led to a temporary closure of schools in several zonal education offices, including in Morawaka and Kotapula in the southern province. Taking the inclement weather into account, the National Building Research Organisation said the early landslide warning issued to several areas of Gaul, Hambantota, Kaluthara, Mathura and Ratnapura district remains effective.
Warning level 1 watch yellow warning was issued to Neluwa, Nagoda, Baddegama, Yakalamulla and LPTA Divisional Secretariat Division in Gaul district, Walasmulla Secretariat Division in Hambantota district, Palinur and Walalawita Divisional Secretariat Division in Kaluthara district, Atulliya, Mulatiyana, Akurasa, Kotapala, Pitabadara and Pascoda Divisional Secretariat Division in Mathura district, Ahaliagoda and Kiriella Divisional Secretariat Division in Ratnapura district.
In the meantime, the Department of Meteorology said several spells of rain will occur in the western, Sabargamur, central and northwestern provinces and in Gaul and Mathura districts.
දිවයින ආශ්‍රිතව පවතින කාලගුණයේ වෙනස් වීම ක්‍රමෙන් අඩු වෙමින් යනවා. කෙසේ වෙතත් අද දවසේදීත් අපිට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්න පුළුවන් විටින් විට වැසි විශේෂයෙන්ම බස්නාහිර සබරගමු මධ්‍යම පළාත් වයිඹ පළාත් ඒ වගේම ගාල්ල සහ මාතර දිස්ත්‍රික්කවලත් ඊයේ දිනේට සාපේක්ෂව අද වැස අඩු වේවි. ඒ වගේම මෙම තත්ත්වයේ වැසි සහිත ස්වභාවය හෙට දිනේදී වඩාත් අඩු වීමේ හැකියාවක් පවතී.
Director of the National Dengue Control Unit, Dr. Nalin Aryaratna, says the DEN3 variant of the dengue virus spreading among the population creates a high risk of accelerating the process of the virus spread. He urged the public once again to keep their residences clean to prevent breeding spaces for mosquitoes.
So far, since the beginning of the year, 33,742 dengue cases have been recorded across the island. According to the National Dengue Prevention Unit, over 50% of the cases were reported from the Western Province. Colombo recorded the highest dengue cases, numbering 7,017, followed by 7,602 from Gampaha and 1,984 from Kalutara. The National Dengue Prevention Unit said 22 dengue-related fatalities have been reported so far this year, with 7 of them being reported from the Western Province. This includes 2 deaths from Colombo, 4 from Gampaha and 1 death from Kalutara. In this backdrop, several dengue prevention programs were carried out in various areas of Colombo today. Further, Director of the National Dengue Control Unit, Dr. Nalin Aryaratna, said the dengue situation of the country is worsening due to the spread of the DEN3 variant.
The situation is now becoming worse because number of cases are increasing day by day. So that is the kind of alarming sign that we can observe right throughout the year and specifically from the month of May. Our advice to the public is that start the cleanup programs. The Western Province now specifically, we have already given advices to the public and authorities to do the needful in order to clean up the households and other areas and institutions to eliminate all these breeding places. In addition to that, we would like to give advices to all the people living in the area that I already highlighted to do the same in order to eliminate all these breeding places and to avoid the further breeding of the mosquitoes within the area. Now, if we have fever for more than 2 days, you need to go and seek the medical advices to check whether you have dengue illness or not. As far as the virus is concerned, now we observe dengue 3 type, serotype is disseminating among the population. That is a little bit of an alarming sign because we have observed this serotype from 2009 among the population, but in last years we haven't seen many number of patients who have been infected with dengue 3 virus type. Due to the fact we do not see the immunization against this virus type, therefore the immunity against the dengue 3 virus type is less among the population. So that is kind of an alarming sign because if the dengue 3 virus is spreading throughout the population, there is a high risk of spreading dengue illness among the population in a speedy manner.
Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Vijayasekara says Unit 3 of the Norochole power plant will be shut down for a period of 100 days. According to the minister, Unit 3 of Norochole will be shut down from 3rd June onwards for a scheduled major overhaul maintenance work. The minister added that other thermal power plants will be used to manage power generation to prevent any power outages. The minister meanwhile said on the 30th, cargo of coal currently unloading at Norochole will meet the Ceylon Electricity Board's entire coal requirement for this season. Further, he highlighted that there will not be power cuts as speculated by CEB unions and media reports due to a coal shortage. President Ranil Wickremesinghe this afternoon removed governors of the North, East and Northwest provinces from their positions. Jeevan Tyagaraja, who held his post as the governor of the Northern Province, Anuradha Yahampath, who was the governor of the Eastern Province, and Admiral of the Fleet Vasantha Karannagoda, who held the post of governor of the Northwest Province, were removed from their positions. According to the President's media division, new governors will be appointed on the 17th of May. We'll be back after a short commercial break.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින් වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ටීමෝ වෙතින් අත්වා ගැන ඔබත් විමසලිමත් වන්න
Welcome back in more news. The Colombo High Court today rejected a preliminary preliminary objection raised by the defendants regarding a case filed by the Attorney General against millionaire businessman Mohammed Ibrahim and his two sons, residents of Mahavila Park in Dematagoda, who are accused of concealing information on the 2019 Easter Sunday terror attacks. There, the High Court judge also ordered the pre-trial conference of the case to be conducted on 6th of July 2023. The defendant, Mohammed Ibrahim, is the father of the two suicide bombers, Infas Ahmed and Ilham Ahmed, who carried out suicide blasts at mainstream hotels in Colombo. The two other defendants are the brothers of the two suicide bombers in question. In business news, Sri Lanka plans to attract 100 projects related to information technology as part of a new foreign direct investment initiative. Chairman of the Board of Investment, Dinesh Veerakkodi, said improving ease of doing business in Sri Lanka is currently a top priority to address investment concerns. He made these comments while addressing the annual business forum of the Board of Investment and the delegation of German industry and commerce in Sri Lanka.
The annual business forum on the Board of Investment and the delegation of German industry and commerce in Sri Lanka was held in Colombo recently under the patronage of German ambassador to Sri Lanka, Holger Subert. The key objective of the meeting was to foster solidarity for investment and revisit doing business concerns with Sri Lanka for existing German investors. During the forum, the German ambassador in Sri Lanka emphasized that German technology and novel international benchmarks of human capital development will continue to improve skills of the Sri Lankan workforce amidst the fourth industrial revolution. He highlighted that German investors decide to do a business in a country with a lifetime commitment. Speaking here, BOI Chairman Dinesh Veerakkodi said the Board of Investment has embarked on a new foreign direct investment initiative and noted the contribution of German entrepreneurs to the IT industry. Sri Lanka plans in attracting 100 IT projects as a part of the new FDI initiative.
The Colombo Bourse ended lower for a second straight session today, dragged by the losses in industrial and communication services stocks. The old share price index settled down 0.24%, ending at 8,906.20 points. Conglomerate Explore Lanka Holdings and Sri Lanka Telecom were the top losers on the index, falling 1.16% and 2.15% respectively. Trading volume on the index fell to 42.9 million shares from 94.7 million in the previous session. Meanwhile, the S&P SL20 slipped 3.49% to end at 2,569.37 points. The market's turnover fell to 676.6 million rupees from 785.8 million rupees in the previous session. Transportation sector was the top contributor to the market turnover, while food and beverage and tobacco sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 28.2 million rupees, while domestic investors were net sellers, offloading shares worth 675.9 million rupees, the data showed. Let's now have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Global oil prices edged up today as the prospect of tightening supplies due to OPEC Plus production cuts and resumption in US buying for reserves outweighed concerns about fuel demand in the United States and China.
Brent crude futures were up 36 cents to end at $74.53 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate crude was at $70.41 a barrel, up by 37 cents or 0.5%. Last week, following concerns on that the United States could enter a recession amid risks of a historic default at the beginning of June, both benchmarks fell for a fourth consecutive week. Global crude supplies could tighten in the second half as OPEC Plus is making additional output cuts that are reducing sour crude volumes. OPEC Plus announced in April that some members would cut output by around 1.16 million barrels per day, bringing the total volume of cuts to 3.66 million barrels per day. However, according to Iraqi's Minister of Oil, Iraq does not expect OPEC Plus to make further cuts to oil output at its next meeting on 4th of June. Meanwhile, flows of northern Iraqi crude oil to Turkey's Ceyhan port have yet to resume following Baghdad's request to restart them last week. Leaders of the Group of 7 nations could announce new measures at their meetings between 19th of May and 21st of May that target third countries evading sanctions on Russia or its war in Ukraine.
With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Have a good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.